Okay, so in our lessons we've been talking about the subject of fear. You wrote me questions and I asked those questions to my family in an interview, and we also watched a talk by the novelist Karen Thompson Walker. Now, Karen Thompson Walker's point is that our fears can either be useful to us, they can be our friends, or they can lead us astray, they can be our enemies. Depends how we listen to our fears. If we apply cold logic, mathematical reasoning and analysis to the things that most frighten us, they can be really, really useful. They can guide us in life. If we listen to our imaginations, then they're likely to lead us astray and can make us make terribly wrong decisions, like those men of the whale ship Essex. So how can we apply logic? How can we start to analyze fear to know which is useful for us and how it can be useful in our lives?
We can never be completely free of risk, but we can take steps to mitigate dangers. Our ancestors knew this just as we do. For them, this typically meant making sacrifices and offerings to the gods in hope of prosperity or protection from harm, just as Agamemnon is doing in this painting where he sacrifices his daughter to the goddess Artemis. We can also take calculated risks in the hope of some reward. So far as we know, humans are the only species capable of doing this. And the development of human civilization has gone hand in hand with efforts to control the world around us to suit our purposes and prevent our fears from coming true. The risk-reward matrix is one way to assess whether a given risk is worth taking or not. In modern times, the concept is fundamental in the financial sector in helping to make investment decisions, but it can also be applied to any risk. In this case, both risk and reward are categorized as high, medium, or low. An ideal action would be one with a low risk and a high reward. But opportunities like this are hard to find. Typically, a higher risk investment of time or money will yield a greater potential reward. Actions to avoid are ones which would be assessed as high risk and low reward. Look at task A on the attached worksheet. Can you decide where each of the given historical events should appear on the risk-reward matrix? Which of these do you think were successful? Karen Thompson Walker suggests an alternative way in which fear can guide our action, but this can also be expressed within a matrix. She suggests that we tend to be guided in life by our most vivid fears, even when their likelihood is low. As a child, I spent many sleepless nights worrying about sharks, and I still feel anxious when I see footage of them on TV, even though there has never been a documented case of a shark attack in the UK. The men on the whale ship Essex knew their lack of food and water meant almost certain death by starvation unless they could quickly find land, but they still chose the longest route to safety for fear of the horrific yet remote possibility that they might encounter cannibals on the nearby islands. And I'm feeling terrified at the prospect of riding on a roller coaster, even though statistically I'm in far greater danger every time I drive my car to the shops and back. My aunt's terror of PowerPoint presentations would be an example of a vivid and yet very real fear. Before giving a talk, she would have needed to work hard to fight her physiological fear responses, what biologists call fight or flight. What we really should be worried about, though, are the things that are less vivid in our imagination, but almost certain to happen unless we do something about them now. Things like the changing climate or the impact of lifestyle-related health issues that we can have some control over now, but we tend to worry less about these than the vivid fears which really capture our imaginations.
Okay, so I'm here in the Disney studios here at the Disney Paris park, and I'm outside a ride called Avengers Flight Force. Now I've chosen this ride deliberately because I want to take advantage of the idea of probability versus impact as a matrix. I've chosen this ride because I know it's completely safe deep down, of course, but the fear that I feel is quite intense at the moment because of the different aspects of this particular ride. So just to read to you some of the things about it, it goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, so its acceleration is extreme, from 0 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour in 60 seconds. Acceleration is something that really makes me feel unwell on these kind of rides, so I'm pretty nervous about that. We've also got 3 rollover loops, 2 inversions, and there is 1 corkscrew, whatever that means. So I'm feeling pretty nervous right now. It's quite interesting to me to think that these physiological responses that I'm having to my fear have evolved over millions of years, and it's an ancient survival mechanism that helped our ancestors to survive. So as part of a physiological response system we call fight or flight, and when you're in danger or when you're in perceived danger, your body puts itself into a position to be ready either to fight against what that danger is or to run away. Now that's really useful if you're fighting tigers or lions as our ancestors did. But when your fear is giving a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation like my Auntie Rosie said, or taking on the role of chair for a school governing body, that's really unuseful. I've got butterflies in my stomach as all the blood is pumped away from my digestive organs into my muscles, ready to run away or to fight whatever it is I'm afraid of. My hands are shaking quite a lot right now, you can see that. And that's the same thing, right? As the adrenaline is pumped around my body, my hands are ready to fight or to run away. All of my limbs are full of oxygenated blood, ready to help me to survive this dangerous situation. Of course, I know that it's not dangerous at all, but that's only with my logic. My imagination is still running absolutely wild. Okay, so there's no turning back now. I'm in the queue and I am absolutely terrified right now. On top of the fear that I'm feeling about going on the ride, I now have a 25-minute wait before I can go on that ride. So my mind's racing, I'm looking for excuses, trying to find ways to duck out of it. But I'm going to try and control this by taking long, slow, deep breaths and trying to stay focused and get the job done. Okay, so I feel extremely hot. I've had to take my coat off. My throat is so dry, I can barely talk anymore. And I think I've got another 10 minutes or so left to wait until I start the ride. Okay, so I'm noticing that the whole design of this queuing system is designed to increase people's anticipation, right? If you like roller coasters, I guess that's going to enhance your adrenaline levels, which makes you enjoy the ride that much more. If you're frightened of roller coasters, it just makes you want to look for excuses to run away. Okay, that's done. I've got a feeling of nausea coupled with an enormous sense of relief that it's over, with a small but growing feeling of euphoria at having completed that, and knowing that I've faced my fears. That makes me better prepared to face real dangers or real threats in the future. And maybe that's why things like roller coasters and horror stories and horror movies are so popular. They allow us to face our fears in a controlled environment, and that allows us to make sense of them, but also gives us the courage and confidence to deal with other things in the future, and we're better prepared to face those things that we're frightened of.